What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another technical analysis. And what I like to do in these videos is provide you guys some entries and exits for stocks that I am looking at through the week, go over some very common stocks that typically give you understanding of that industry, and then continue from there. So with that being said, if you are interested and would like to subscribe, as I do also provide a weekly analysis and a daily pulse on the market at Hemi 137 if you want to check me out there as well. So before we get started, remember to hit that like button and let's jump straight in to some technicals this week. So as you can see, we did have a short trend line here, which again could be a little mini ascending wedge that has essentially started pulling back. Now, there was a lot of expirations that occurred on Friday. You also had the hack that went down. You have a lot of things that are changing, and something we talked about coming into this new administration, you're going to get a lot of headline news that can potentially scare the market, but the market is really numb to the current environment. You are in a global depression. Ultimately, a lot of the things that people are talking about a recessionary period are there. They're just being revised. You don't see them in headline news. And I talk about two different views. This is why essentially the weekly analysis is important, because I give my thesis on what's currently going on in the market and what to be looking for certain events for the thesis to change. Again, you need fear for the Fed to cut rates. You need fear to drive the market down. Friday, we got a little bit of that. Again, I think one of the biggest catalysts moving forward is inflation. And if, again, cutting is going to do enough to start reducing some of that inflation and, again, shifting that back over so we can drop rates and start a lot of these companies can start doing new development, which right now we're kind of in stagflation at this point. So we've been artificially holding up the market to this point. So with that being said, again, very, very critical level this week, the 6K mark. Again, they are pricing in the end of the world this week. You may ask why, and that is because NVIDIA earnings is on Wednesday after close. Yes, it has a significance play. Industry leaders have a significance play in how the market is dictated. And then your secondaries, like what will happen with your core inflation report, what comes out of the monetary policy, all those types of events have a big sway and potential pivots in the market that you need to be looking for. So being said, again, this week will be very interesting. I think we're going to kind of hover around here. I think we might get a short or intermittent bounce potentially back up to the 60-50 by Wednesday close. Anytime there's potential panic in the market for some big event coming up, the market will typically sell off previous. It will do a recovery bounce, and then the market will kind of dictate where it goes from that point, given off of whatever outcome of that event is. And then again, ultimately understand that you have to go after price action. Even if the earnings may be good, you have to go after price action. You have to understand NVIDIA holds 6% of the index, so it has a big weight on the index. It's not just Apple anymore. It also includes NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is going to be extremely important this week. Once again, all industry leaders are reported, which will end on Wednesday. Then there'll continue to be earnings. Just to keep that in mind, earnings will continue. But again, ultimately, the market will determine its direction from that point. So this is why I've been talking about NVIDIA being that anchor. So being said, again, very critical point. If we do break below this, I see us jumping all the way back down to 58. It's not saying we can't recover. It's a very volatile market when you're talking about Trump, so you do need to keep that in mind. This thing could bounce right back right after that. He does like to get on the horn if stuff starts selling off pretty heavy. Again, ultimately understand we had a huge crypto hack this weekend or on Friday from Bybit, losing 1.5 billion, I believe it was, in ETH. But again, ultimately understand that Bitcoin didn't sell off crazy like it possibly would have about a year ago. It's becoming more numb to some of this news, especially with a lot of institutional investors. That is also very, very, very important moving forward. But right now, the ceiling has just roughly kind of been around that 61 mark. Every time we break it, we keep selling off. Again, you are getting again into a period where the market likes to sell off heavily part of the time of the year, this end of February, March time period. We have a lot of potential big catalysts going off in March. We have the debt ceiling. We have inflation reports. We have a lot of things that could potentially really nail this thing down. And after NVIDIA earnings, we could lead right into March selling off. So this is, again, why we're setting up, and this level is so critical this week. You can see it's pretty strong support here, much stronger support here. So if we do reach down to this level, I expect some sort of bounce potentially back up to the 6K mark. If it decides to wants to come back down and start testing that level again to potentially break it. Again, you have some pretty big supports here on the way down. It's not going to go straight down unless you get some unforeseen fear, which is manufactured event can occur from time to time. Typically, you can identify them before they are. You are in a debt. There's a debt bomb that you're currently sitting on top of. So these are all things to consider. Again, delinquencies, all that stuff is out there. The information is not private. You can go look for it yourself and determine that, again, the consumer health is bad. You are in a recession. Just because a lot of these places are saying that they are not, they're still massively cutting. A lot of these big corporations are still massively cutting, coming up with unique ways, essentially, to get you unemployed or cause you to quit so that they don't have to pay you any kind of severance packages. So that's what we're currently seeing there. And then on Bitcoin, like I said, there was a big hack on Friday. It scared the market a little bit, but it wasn't that bad. We're still in range. Again, the 90K mark. I really think eventually we're going to break this and we're going to come back down to the 72 mark. I think that will be the last dip before we have one last rip and attempt to hit that 120K, I think. And then I think we'll top out before we roll over into the next bear market is where I'm thinking. A lot of people are expecting 200. I really don't see that happening. Institutions, the more institutions get involved, the more controlled it is, and you don't have wild swings. And something you need to understand, your days of going up 500% on Bitcoin, I don't know if that's going to be even plausible once all these institutions get in. Now you got states involved and a strategic reserve. They want stability. They don't want it fluctuating at some wild, 50K swings. They don't want that. Again, this is why you've seen precious metals be heavily manipulated over the past, 30, 50 some years, right? So you have to understand that moving forward. And Bitcoin's going to be the same kind of scenario that you're looking at there as well. And then let's take a look at Tesla. As always, I really like the theme for this thing. Again, it's kind of holding the 200 daily is roughly sitting around this 303 mark. So we did have a crazy sell-off and a bounce, which was expected. Looking to potentially aim for that 321 mark. Again, you got solid support here. We haven't really retested this too much, but there is still pretty solid support here. And you're seeing in the 200 EMA. So typically, even if it does break this, it's very short-lived. I think if we even get down to this territory, it'll be very short-lived. Even, whatever kind of meltdown you want to have down, nonetheless, I think that you're in a good position to be buying around this whole area here, because I do believe once the narrative of robotics and humanoids, which is catching up steam very, very quickly, all it's going to take is one video. It's going to change a lot of people's mind. It's going to catch fire. And then that's going to be it. And then Tesla's going to be gone because it's one of the very rare companies that is publicly traded that is actually in humanoid robots. And with, again, the breakthrough with Grok 3, that's only re-emphasizing that Tesla will once again come out on top of everything else, not with just FSD. FSD is a standalone business that can do remarkably well, but we're not even talking about the humanoids, and Wall Street hasn't even priced that in. Yes, they are very late. They still believe it's just a car company. It's well beyond that, and they keep re-emphasizing that, and eventually you'll get it. The whole period of EV, that was just to kind of get the funding for Tesla. Now that Tesla has it has its own two legs. It's developed its own stuff. It's engineering and making stuff more efficient. And they're at this point to where they created their own ecosystem. And you'll see that it is a technology company, not just a EV company. So that being said, RX still another really big one I'm liking here. I did have some massive news this week, so we did have a big breakup. I'm looking for this to backfill this gap. I don't know if we'll go any lower than 8. I think we may hover around here. If we do break below that, I think it will be potentially minute. Again, it's been consolidating for quite a bit, so we'll have to see how we open this thing. I would really like it down to get it one more grab of RX. Again, I really like this moving forward. The one company that I think was I can't remember the name of the company, but there was a company that Temp. That was TEM. That was the company that Nancy Pelosi invested in. That's just the training data for these kinds of models for RX. So you can only imagine what this is going to look like once this actually catches fire. So Really keeping an eye on this. I've been in and out of this position multiple times, playing this range. It's been some good profit and looking to make, again, some more good profit with this company moving forward. So keeping that on deck. If it does stay above this, we'll see if it can consolidate between roughly this 971 and this 1070, and then see if it can get a bigger rip out of this moving forward. Sound has earnings along with a lot of what NVIDIA is reporting on. A lot of their other companies that they're already invested in are also reporting. I do really like this current support seeing at roughly around 10. I think you got some kind of a descending wedge that's currently going on here. I think this is more of a shakeout, and then they're going to have some tremendous earnings, and I think this thing could recover almost back to 25 again, potentially even more. You have to understand, we are at one last major dip before I think we have a very golden bearish push forward from this side up. There's a lot of controversy, however you want to think about it, but I'm thinking more technical wise. You're going to have one last big dip because things are pretty overextended. We have been doing rolling recessions, and that was shown back in 22. But I think you're going to have one last major correction. Then we might just we're going to continue to crash up. And again, I think for major changes that what Trump and everybody are doing will take a significant amount of time. But nonetheless, so we're currently at the support. Again, you're going to get a push back up to the 15 here. You're going to get rejected because it's the first time, and then we're going to need to see if this breaks back out and then runs for 25. Again, if they do good on earnings on Thursday, this thing might just gap back up over 15, and then they may be gone after that point. So again, not financial advice, but I really like Sound as well. I've always had Sound on the radar. But now that's actually starting to pull back. I talk about this all the time. Now that it's pulling back, I'll start mentioning it again. R&R, Rich Tech Robotics is another big one. I do really like this wedge that's currently going on here. As long as it can kind of sustain this this 193 mark, I think this thing could have a bigger push up here. It's been consolidating nicely. So I'm looking for this thing to potentially break out this week or next, especially if NVIDIA does well. We want to do one last big run before the inflation report. That could be potentially bad. That sways the market down. I don't know. But again, I think it's a good position for that moving forward. And then ELF, again, is another big one. I've been mentioning this one a lot. I do really like this one moving forward, even with the tariffs and everything. An extra dollar or two is not going to kill ELF. ELF is by far, if you go into the data, ELF is by far a standalone makeup company. And maybe you don't want to trade makeup, but it's not even about that. What it's about is the potential this thing has, and I can think it can easily reclaim this 220 and go even higher than that. If you are looking at a longer projection over a couple potential the next year, I think we'll recover. That right now they are expanding, so you do need to keep that in mind as well. So, but currently right now we're kind of hovering around this 72 mark. Again, there's some pretty heavy resistance sitting back here at the 90 mark. So we may come up and retest this, get rejected, and then that might be the leg to get back up over this thing. But again, I do believe it can recover very quickly. Lemonade, it's one I've been watching. It's currently really holding this level here at the 32. I was hoping this can break back down. I would really like this thing back below 22 and start buying at that point. This may be the floor. If the market wants to go, a lot of these have been beaten down for so long over the past 2 years. They may just keep running. The ones that haven't been running, they may start showing support. And then we could get another bullish year this year and maybe not really see a quote unquote recession until next year. But we're going to have to see how that plays out. We don't know for certain when that's going to happen. We know there is a debt bomb going on, but that shouldn't deter you from taking positions over overbeaten stocks. Right now, this has pulled back nicely. You can get in, but you could potentially expect this thing to pull back even more. I do believe 11A can recover a lot of where it was at before. I believe it was over 100 and some dollars. I very much can believe that this will do the same thing moving forward. But again, our current ceiling too is at 51. So watching that. Celsius had a big earnings. They essentially gobbled up another energy drink company and they gapped up. That's what's going to happen with a lot of these that I've been talking about. Is all it's going to take is one good earnings and you're going to get gap ups. And this is a great example of that. And if you're not buying and worried and concerned, you need to get past that, especially if it's a good company where it has a ton of growth. There's a fine line between speculation, which you're always going to have to speculate anyway. But can ultimately understand some of these really good names that you have to understand the reason why they sold off was because they maybe had to lower guidance just because of the uncertainty, or maybe their growth rate cut, but their growth rate's still at 34%. Why would you not buy it on the dip, right? So, and this being one of them, I've been talking about this for a while, and a massive gap up over the past week, over the past earnings. So, current ceiling here is roughly around the 39. Support here is roughly around the 32 mark. Then you got some pretty tight support here in the gap up. But if we can break this, we could really start running towards all-time highs again. So, and let's see what else we have here. AMD, always honorable mention. This is still one of those stocks that I think is going to have a tremendous coming year, especially the way their chips are designed. They're designed for inference, which is the next big step for AI and being able to do these calculations and learning. And AMD is vastly ahead of NVIDIA at that point. So these are things you need to keep in mind. So this could have an NVIDIA type moment over the next couple of years. This is a much longer hold for me. I've been accumulating as this thing's been going down. Solid wall here at 109. And then you got that 128. And then some of these other levels here at the 158, 140. Again, I think this thing could drop below 100. I think if it does, it would be very brief, or there would need to be some major catalyst or black swan event that would scare the market down here. But on that point, I would still be accumulating because I do believe in AMD, AI infrastructure still going to be very, very important moving forward. So it's good to keep that in mind there. And then we are going to look at BA real quick, of course, because it's one of the ones we always look at. Again, it's just been kind of hovering. We have broken out of that massive wedge on the monthly. We did retest down here. Looks like we made an attempt to try to retest. Pretty solid support here at the 165. As long as we can hold that, I think we'll at least get back up to 200. And that wedge breakout would essentially cause us to potentially fill this gap of the 242. So there's that potential there. I don't love this stock. I've traded it multiple times and made some good profits, but again, ultimately that was when it was extremely beaten down by the $100 level. This company has planes falling out of the sky. Again, don't even know why it's at 170. So I think you run a lot of risk there. But on the same token, it's also backed by the U.S. government to supply planes as well. So you have to keep that in mind. Then JP Morgan banks, obviously one of the biggest winners out of this earnings cycle, but we are starting to see some red and some pullback. Again, you can't just keep pressing up and expect things to keep doing that. So we'll continue to watch and see how this is. I know JP Morgan released that Jamie Dimon sold a ton of shares yet again. He's been selling a ton of shares. He's done it here. He's done it here. Again, he's one of the CEOs that's been known to never sell his shares for, I don't think he's ever sold shares until the past couple of months. And now he's doing it quite often. So now it's starting to, people are starting to catch on and they don't like that. So that's one thing that you're starting to see some weakness in banks, especially with the number one bank in the US. That is concerning moving forward. So you just have to keep that in mind. Again, I'm not saying don't take position. Don't get overly biased if you don't take a position, especially if a stock is down 30, 40, 50%. Right? It can drop a little bit more, but more than likely what the chances are, it may only drop 10, 15, 20% from where it's already sold off. So if you are investing in very, very good sound companies, then it shouldn't be a worry or a concern in general. And understand that maybe you have to hold a little bit longer. Don't put yourself in a position where you need it done now or overnight. That's one of the worst positions you can be in any market in general. So with that, let me see what else I got here. A lot of these, again, still looking potentially good, but they're just too high as of right now. Quantum computing, I know, is another big thing, but ultimately Microsoft came out with that product, their new chip. But again, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference yet. I think you still got some time. Next couple of years, it might be, if you're willing to buy now and hold for that long. I think you will see a lot more pullbacks before that actually takes off from where it's currently standing. So, but that's pretty much it. That's everything I have. Again, short and sweet, to the point. There's, again, some great buys right now. Nike is another one. I didn't bring that one up, but Nike is still a great buy as of right now. That could be a big one moving forward if you want to, but I think that's going to be more of a slow burner than anything else, but it could be strong and stable. And again, still something that you can believe in. You know, it's not just going to die off and go to zero. Every company has a possibility, but the probability is very low. with a company like Nike. So well, with that all being said, if you've made it this far, go ahead and drop a ticker, write your comments and thesis on what you're looking at this week, drop a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next one.